Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas and this is Investing Against the Grain. In today's episode, this is purely a PSA to every parent out there, every driver who cares about safety when they drive, anybody who is sick and annoyed of all of the idiots out there who are just brain dead and want to drive like there's no care in the world and there's no one else on the roads. Anyone who's tired of having your loved ones in your car and you see everyone else cutting in, trying to make to the next light in a hurry to get nowhere. This episode is about talking about why, if these are things that you care about and you want to try to prevent as much possible damage from the idiots out there who are driving, Tesla is the vehicle to get. With that said, do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, and let's get into it. Currently, I'm in Miami, Florida. I'm down here for a business trip. I have a few customers to see. In order to get down here, I had to drive over from where I live. And normally that'll take about 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours to get down here. Instead, it took a lot longer than it should have. And why? Well, the reason is idiots. All these idiots out on the road who are speeding, who are switching in and out of lanes, don't care about anyone else, don't understand that these other vehicles have families in it, have little kids, have grandmothers, grandparents. There's other people on the road, and instead they're rushing to the next light, they're rushing to the next exit, they're weaving in and out, they're texting, they're doing all these things that it's just selfish. The idea of this video was really to help vent some of my frustration that I had when I was driving down here. It really grinds my gears that people don't understand what Tesla is doing for the world when it comes to safety. In this video, I want to make a video that just addresses how Tesla is above and beyond everybody else when it comes to safety, how they take safety beyond the normal safety standards from NHTSA and what the requirements are. Instead, they go above and beyond. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. It doesn't matter that it costs more money. It doesn't matter it costs more R&D. It's irrelevant. We're also going to look at Tesla's vehicle safety report and see how many miles before Tesla gets into a crash versus how many miles before the average vehicle gets into a crash. And I already know all of the arguments against these metrics, so I'll address all of them. Don't worry. If you think I'm, full of BS, or if you don't agree with what I'm gonna say, stick around. Let me address what I know you're gonna say, what you might comment down below, because again, this is something I'm very passionate about. I am so sick and tired of seeing other people have their days, their lives affected by people who are not paying attention when they're driving, by people who are making mistakes because they're too young, they're too distracted, they're too old, or they just have other things on their mind. They had a bad day at work, or again, they're just being a fool and they're rushing from one stoplight to the next. Tired of it. It's so frustrating. And honestly, the more I make these FSD review videos, the more and more I'm aware of my own surroundings and the silly moves that people do when they drive. All right, so with that said, before we look at the Tesla vehicle safety video, let's take a look at that safety report I mentioned. So here we have an article from Inside EVs. And if we scroll down, we can actually see the note from Tesla. So this was Tesla's vehicle safety report Q2 2021. And it said, in the second quarter, we recorded one crash for every 4.41 million miles driven, in which drivers were using autopilot technology, auto steer, and active safety features. For drivers who were not using autopilot technology, in other words, no auto steer and active safety features, we recorded one crash for every 1.2 million miles driven. By comparison, NHTSA most recent data shows that in the United States, there is an automobile crash for every 484,000 miles driven. So let's put this into perspective. For every essentially 500,000 miles driven for all other vehicles, there is an accident. All right, so it takes 500,000 miles to be driven before there's an accident. Now with Tesla, without any other safety, right, without anything, it's every 1.2 million miles driven, then there will be an accident. So that's more than twice as safe. But just to, we'll be conservative. Tesla driving without any of the other safety features is twice as safe, has twice less likely to get into an accident than other vehicles, according to NHTSA's data. Now, if we take this into a comparison using autopilot technology, it is 4.41 million miles before you get a crash. 4.41. That is 9 times, and again, conservative, right? Because it's actually more than 9 times. That's 9 times safer. 9 times less of a chance to get into an accident. That's ridiculous. Let's look at this chart for a better comparison. Here we can see The average in the US, according to NHTSA, we can see it right down here, okay? So this is how many miles can be driven before there's an accident, right? Under 500,000. Here in the blue line, this is Tesla cars without autopilot and without active safety features. And this is where we hit about 1.2, right? About 1.2 million. If we look at Tesla cars not using autopilot, but they do have active safety features, right? This jumps up to just over 2 million miles before there's an accident. That's phenomenal. 2 million miles before there's an accident. However, if we jump here with autopilot engaged, then we see this jump all the way up to 4.2 million miles driven before there's ever an accident. That is incredible. That, again, conservatively, is 9 times safer than the average for any other vehicle. This is where I know people are gonna sit there and say,
oh, but Nick, you don't know what you're missing. It's skewed because all that is just highway driving with Tesla.
Let me address this. No, not true. First of all, I know so many people who use it not just on the highway. It's meant for the highway, yes, but people will use it outside of the highway. That's already skewed, but I do agree with you. It's meant mainly for the highway, so yes, maybe that skews the data. However, with FSD beta, things have gotten a lot better, right? FSD beta is now starting to get rolled out to everybody. For over a year, the 2,000 beta testers have been using FSD beta. It is not an autonomous vehicle. I'm not even pretending like it is, right? But what it is, it's a assistance, right? It helps drivers be better. What I'm trying to say is human plus FSD beta, amazing at driving. For the last year, there have been 2,000 FSD beta drivers. In that last year, 0 accidents. Now, I get it. Now the argument will be, oh, but it's only 2,000 people driving. Clearly, if you still have an issue with this, I'm never gonna win you over. You're never gonna be convinced. You're just stuck in your own way of thinking. But either way, even without any of that, without any of the safety features, it's still 1.2 million miles before there's ever an accident versus under 500,000 miles for everyone else. That's the average. All right, so what I'm trying to point out here is that there's something going on here with Tesla. They're doing something right. The drivers are doing something right. There is a trend here that is undeniable. So I just want to start off with that. And now I want to go ahead and take a look at this video that goes over how Tesla actually does their safety test, how they go above and beyond industry standards, and why I believe this has to be a PSA for every parent out there, every person who cares about safety, anybody who cares about the potentiality of getting into an accident and their loved ones getting an accident, want to make sure that they come out of it walking and unscathed. And if they do have something that happens, it's as minimal as possible, right? We want to have the best chance to walk away from a potential accident. I always say this, always plan for the worst possible outcome, because if you do that, then you can live with the end results, all right? And so to me, the worst possible outcome is a horrible car accident. And if that's the case, I want the vehicle that is going to be the safest and gives me the best possible chance to come out of there alive and hopefully unscathed. Let's take a look at this video. Just before we get started into this video, for those of you who don't know, a Tesla roof is actually extremely strong. It can hold up to the weight of 3 elephants. So the reason I bring this up is because Model Ys are the best vehicles in the world from a safety perspective. This is based on NHTSA calculations, not Tesla or me saying this. And one of the reasons is because it's very difficult for it to flip over. Now, a lot of people may say, oh, well, that's how all EVs are. Not quite true. Because all EVs, yes, maybe they have that lower center of gravity, but they don't have such a strong reinforced roof. Because when you do inevitably flip over, right, there's an 8% chance of a Model Y flipping over. In that scenario, that roof can get crushed. But the fact that it can withstand the weight of 3 elephants, it will not crush, right? It'll have a very high probability of staying in its actual structured form rather than collapsing inside of the people driving. Anyways, let's continue.
The Tesla Crash Lab. Today we're doing a very special crash. We will be testing a pickup truck hitting a Model Y. As you see, it's a very small overlap. This is what we call an off-zone impact. This is the last piece of validation for what we believe is a world first.
Previously, the best way to design a safe car was for industry standard crash testing. And those crash tests are like a few grains of sand. Those grains of sand are meant to represent the beach, but in reality, the beach is infinitely complex. Every crash is different.
So what he's saying there is that the standard for crash testing is to test in, like a few spots, right? There's a few spots that we think that's where, the most vulnerable parts of cars are, and that's where crashes might happen. But the truth is those few spots aren't what the data actually shows is where most crashes happen. And so his point is that we test by industry standards, right? NHTSA standards, right? Crash rating standards, that we test in certain spots in the car. And if it passes those tests, we call it good and we move on. What he's saying is that that's the same as just taking a couple grains of sand from the beach and saying, hey, here's the beach. When in reality, the beach is infinitely bigger, right? So you're gonna understand quickly why this matters, because this is what separates Tesla from everybody else. And the main reason is because they're just doing the right thing, right? They don't get paid anymore on this. Tesla doesn't see a profit from this, right? There's no gain. It's just the morality of it, doing the right thing.
With emerging technologies, there are new opportunities. Now we can look at the real world and design for that.
We're the only car maker in the world that has a fleet of well over 1 million cars on the road, fully instrumented from a sensing perspective.
We can know exactly where the seat is, we can know where the steering wheel is, we know if they're belted, we know when the airbag deployed exactly to the millisecond.
We know exactly what our fleet of cars is being exposed to out there. The richness of data we are collecting enables us to develop safety beyond the stars and beyond the ratings, and for situations which is simply not picked up by the regulatory rating test that we and all other car makers are doing.
Industry standard crash testing is focused on impacts directly into the door. We've noticed in the field that it's very common for impacts not to hit the door.
Once we found the gap in what the legal testing required and the types of crashes we saw.
So this is what I'm talking about right here. This is essentially the industry standard for how to test a vehicle and where they think crashes will happen. And so as was just mentioned, normally it's on the side of the door, so you can see down here. Oh well, please ignore that. I'll just move this to the side for right now. But you can see down here we have frontal impacts. Up here we have rear impacts, and you can see where the testing is here. And so what you're going to see here shortly is that there is a difference, and the difference mainly is in the gap between this. So essentially the white space in this chart, right, that is the gap that is being referred to. And so if this is the industry standard, what's Tesla doing, right? Where is that gap, and what does that mean for Tesla? So let's take a look at that now.
From our fleet data, we decided to use our very detailed simulation models to run impacts in different locations, like this simulation here. And we use this to really tune down to the millimeter and down to the mile per hour, the threshold at which you need airbags and you don't need airbags. We use that to tune the airbags and the seat belts for optimal safety.
Conventional systems don't detect this type of crash because it's not an industry standard. This new algorithm takes into account the current sensor set, interprets it in a new way, so that we can identify this particular type of crash and provide the optimum restraint for that situation.
So this was brilliant. Tesla has so much technology into this vehicle, all right? They know, if the seatbelt's on. They know the position of the seat, where it is as far as the seat. They know at what rate the airbag's coming out, the impact vehicle is hitting it. They know if you have the AC on. They know if you have your lumbar support on. They have logs for everything that happens in the car. Now, some might say, oh, this is Big Brother-ish, or why is that important? Well, this is why it's important, because they can take all of that data, and what they can determine is based on say in this case a Model Y, getting impact in a certain way, say a quarter panel, which is not part of the industry standard testing. If it hits the quarter panel, where do we think the car will end up? How do we think it'll affect the passengers on the inside? How should we deploy the airbags? Where should we deploy the airbags, and how much, in order to have the least amount of impact on the people inside? Okay, this is big brain thinking. This is taking things to the next level for safety, not just checking off a box like everybody else does. So let's see how this impacts the vehicle itself and the dummies inside of it.
After we ran hundreds of simulations, it was time to test this in the real world.
We have 17 high-speed cameras running at 1,000 frames per second, and camera data forms an integral part of the information that we collect in a big test like this. In the back of the vehicle, in preparation, we have our instrumentation rack, and it's got all the critical infrastructure to make sure we get all the data we need.
So what will happen is that when this pickup truck impacts the Model Y, so within 10 milliseconds of impact, the system will have determined what type of impact this is. And then it will trigger the airbag system and the restraint system to respond in the best possible way.
3, 2, 1.
So we just finished the crash test. Looks like we have a home run result. The cars even ended up exactly where we predicted. Post-crash, the detection worked perfectly. We deployed the airbags exactly as we intended to, as we wanted to, and indeed as we predicted to. And I just had a look at the injury values recorded by the dummies, and they look beautiful. This feels awesome. This is history in the making, and this is really the end result of the entire chain of Tesla's strength in safety development, starting off with the field data, data analytics, lots of simulation, close cooperation between simulation engineers, design engineers, coming here to the lab, recreating this whole crash, performing it flawlessly, capturing the result. Now we have some post-processing to do to validate everything, but once that's done, this is in the pipeline for over-the-air updates to the fleet, improving the cars.
We have more data now than we've ever had before. We can understand real exposure, and then we can design our vehicles for that exposure.
We think over time this will change how you design for vehicle safety. It's all based on knowledge. I think this is just the beginning of a journey for us. The reasoning we're doing this is simple. It's because A, we have the ability, and B, it's because it's the right thing to do.
Because it's the right thing to do. That is why they are doing this. That's simple, okay? Now let's talk about what we just saw there. So in less than 10 milliseconds after impact, the vehicle determines, based on the impact, how should we deploy the restraints? How should we deploy airbags? In what order? How much, right? In order to have the minimal impact on the human, but also the maximum amount of safety. As was mentioned, the vehicle landed in the exact spot they predicted, and as far as the injury impact report from the dummies inside, it was beautiful. It was, in other words, extremely minimal. This is fantastic, okay? This is exactly what we want from our safety engineers, from people like this, from Tesla, from our vehicles. This is the kind of stuff we need, and this is 2021. Now, hopefully with this video, you're able to see why I'm so passionate about Tesla and their safety, and why I wanted to make this what I call a PSA announcement, or a PSA for parents, a public service announcement, saying if you're looking or thinking about getting a Tesla, and you care about the safety of your children, if you care about the safety of your family, if you just care about your own safety, it's very hard to go against to buy anything other than a Tesla. Hopefully, now that you've watched this video, you understand where I'm coming from when I highly recommend you think hard about getting a Tesla if safety is at all consideration when you buy a vehicle. If you have children, if you have grandparents, if you care about your own safety, your family's safety, it's really hard to think about getting any other vehicle other than a Tesla. Just think about it. Imagine you have your little kid in the back and there's an accident that happens. Don't you want a vehicle that is going to take in consideration everything beyond the safety standards? Remember all that white space that we saw in that chart? Yeah, all that other stuff, those are real world accidents, right? It's not, accidents don't happen in just 1, 2, 3, or 4 spots, right? There's a whole different range of how the real world happens, and they can affect everybody. And so the best way we can protect ourselves is by having companies like Tesla do what they're doing, taking things to the next level, going beyond just the standard, going beyond just checking a box. These things matter. I can't stress enough. Just driving to Miami, I saw all these accidents. It was insane. Just think about the ripple effects one accident can have on a family, on people who are sitting there in traffic because of this, right? It's just endless, okay? It can ruin someone's day. It can ruin someone's life financially. It can lose loved ones. Safety has to be something that we strive for and we try to get to as fast as possible. That is why I'm so passionate about full self-driving. That's why I'm so passionate about Tesla. That's why I'm so passionate about all of this, because we need to get to a world where we're not just killing ourselves for no reason. We don't have to do this. We have the technology. Let's be better. Let's be better. That's all we have to do, right? This isn't that hard. Okay, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. For the next one, I will be back home, so we'll be back into the normal setup. Hopefully you guys didn't mind the audio too much or the lighting. doing the best I can while I travel. As always, do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. I love you all. Peace.